everybody. Good morning. So, I started my career about 25 years ago, just before I grew up in Canada. So those of you, I didn't hear the introduction, not that I didn't hear it, I didn't understand it. So I grew up in Canada until I was 16. I moved to Israel and I started my high-tech career when I was 21. And I've been in high-tech for 24 years. You can do the math, and now you know how old I am. For the first 10 years of my career, I was creating products. I was a software developer, I was a product manager. I spent 4 years in New York with a small startup, helped open up the offices there and create a product. When I came back in 2006 to Israel, I was consulting with a startup company who had created a really cool solution. I'm sure you've all seen the really cool solutions on the internet, on YouTube. The problem with the really cool solutions is that sometimes they're cool solutions looking for a problem. Now, those of you who run a real business, that means you collect money from your customers and pay your employees and have hopefully some money left over, know that just having a cool solution isn't going to be a business. And this is what I was meeting with a CEO of a startup, and their cool solution. Now, I think 2006, the iPhone doesn't exist. Can you imagine a time like that? And they had figured out a way to manipulate phone calls so that when you make an international call, you don't need to do all that dialing. I don't know if you remember the calling card era. Some of us don't even know what a calling card is, but when you had to make international calls, you had to dial all kinds of digits to get from here to the US or from here to anywhere else in any other country. The problem was that they couldn't find a business model that was working, and I convinced them to take that product and use it for the business world and allow business people who are using their phones in the office to use their cell phones as an extension of their office. Now that sounds crazy today. I mean, we have everything is on our phone. Remember 2006. There was maybe 1% of the population had a smartphone, and the CEO looked over at me and said, "You know what? You've convinced me. I'm going to move my company into this new era. I'm going to bet on the smartphone, like you say, because I had just come from the US and I'd seen everybody on their BlackBerries. I was sure that this was going to be the next thing." And he said, "I want you to go out and sell this," because I said, "The people, you need to go and sell this to the telecommunication industry." I'm not sure I think I saw MTN maybe is one of the telcos here, Verizon and Telefonica. I'm sure you heard of Vodafone. Those are the companies I said that he has to reach out to. And I'm a product guy, I develop products. I don't know anybody at these companies. And he said to me, "You go and sell them." And I said, "I don't know anybody in that industry. What am I going to do?" He says, "Just like you figured out this, I want you to figure out that." And I said, "Okay, no problem." Phones. Turn them off. But keep them close, because I'm going to need you guys to get on your phones a little bit later on in my talk. So don't throw them out yet. At the time, there was this small company. Who's heard of LinkedIn? I hope everybody puts up their hand. Okay, who has a LinkedIn profile? Okay, good. And how many of you have a LinkedIn application on your phone? Even better. Okay, keep that close. At the time, in 2006, there were only 5 million users on LinkedIn. And as I was researching, every time I was looking up these companies, I found that all these people, there's a lot of people in these companies had profiles on LinkedIn. And this crazy thing, when I connected with them, they would respond, and they would actually respond to my messages asking if they were interested in learning about my new product. My new product, because he'd hired me and I was an employee of this company. The company's name was MobileMax. It was an incredible era for people that were doing work on LinkedIn, because it was so new. It was just when Facebook was there, people were responding. It wasn't being used as a spamming platform like email and LinkedIn is today in some ways, unfortunately. And it was the way that I helped that company start selling in the millions of dollars really successful and I started putting out content on LinkedIn at the time, nobody was doing it. It reminded me of a thing that I'm sure, how many people here are soccer fans? Okay. It's not as many as I thought would be, but that's fine. I'm not a soccer fan. I grew up in Canada. I was a hockey fan. And there was my hockey hero growing up was a fellow by the name of Wayne Gretzky. Anybody heard of Wayne Gretzky? If anybody's heard of it, I'd be very surprised. Think about Messi. Okay? Messi today, that's like Wayne Gretzky was 20 years ago. And he said something really intelligent that's applicable to everybody in this room and anybody that wants to do something incredible. They said, why are you such a great player? And he said, I skate, so maybe I run from a soccer player, to where the puck, the ball, is going to be, not where it has been. And that was his famous statement, and people in business use it to till today. And it's an incredible thing, and then I think it was very similar to what happened to me on LinkedIn, was if you're able to go to where people are going to be at the right in the future, or in the near future, you will be able to be successful. And I hope that my talk today will help you find some of those areas to go to. Another interesting thing happened to me about 5 years after I finished at that company I mentioned before. In 2012, a couple things really, really incredible happened to me. They both might not sound incredible, but one was my youngest daughter was born. You know, we all agree that that's an incredible thing. About 2 days after my daughter was born, the company I was working for at the time was a Brazilian and American company, fired me. I was had a two-day-old baby and no job. Kind of scary, and at the time I thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But that was the day that I decided that I will not work for anybody anymore, and decided to start a company which, through mistakes and a few pieces of luck, turned into Penguin Strategies. Penguin, what we do is we build growth machines for technology companies. That's because that's where my passion is. It's not because I don't think that what we do can apply to the broader world. In fact, we have worked with other companies outside of our niche, but that's the niche that we work in. We're located in Israel, our headquarters are in Israel. We have offices in the US, and we work with quite a few companies in the US, Europe, of course, in Israel. Now, probably was supposed to say that during this slide. All good. We provide the broad. When I say we build growth machines, it means we provide all the services that are needed in order to make that happen, which include branding, content strategies, all the marketing strategy that's needed, business strategy, and then account-based marketing, automation, social media, and all the buzzwords that you know in marketing. Of course, if there's any questions, I can answer about that afterwards. We work with a broad range of technology companies, some of which you will have heard of, some larger enterprises. Some of them you will probably not have heard of because they're small, cybersecurity for automotive or very niche players that only the people in those worlds will hear. The goal of that we have for our customers is to make them famous in their niche. So if you work in that niche and you don't know these people, then we are not doing our job. But enough about me. So what are we going to talk about today? First, I want to try to convince you guys why you need to invest in Inbound, why that's where the puck is going. Once I give you some reasons to do that, I'll share with you a case study that of a customer of ours that we've been working with over the last 5 years, and talk about their journey. And finally, I'll give some pointers what we can all do tomorrow morning in your offices to get on your way to doing Inbound. Okay? If at any time there is a question, or I'm I'm going too fast, feel free to stop me. I know that people are sometimes a little bit shy, but please do that. Now, sometimes when I talk about inbound marketing in different audiences or with new customers, even in my niche, but also when I just talk in general, I get this feeling, or I get a question that says, that's a great story about what you did with that customer, or that tactic sounds like a really great tactic, but I don't think it'll work for us. And do you have any idea why some people think, and I imagine some of you might also think this, why you might not think that what I'm going to talk about, or digital marketing, is not going to work for you? Does anybody have any idea why? Anybody bold enough to give me a reason why they think it might not work for them? You can just yell it out if you want. Usually what I hear is that their business, or their company, or their industry is different. Does that resonate with anybody? I see some people nodding their head. If anybody really disagrees with this, please say so. But that I think there's something that will tie us all together. Why do people do business with you? Why does any company, if you're selling to a consumer or selling to a business, why do they end up pulling their wallet out, or their e-wallet, or their PayPal, and giving you money? What is that one feeling, what is that emotion that makes them, convinces them to give you that payment, that money, that sign that contract? Does anybody, what is it?
Trust.
Thank you. Nothing like someone answering the next slide. Trust. How do you build the trust? Think about it in your businesses. How do you build the trust? Some of you are being authentic, honest, transparent, lucky. Whatever it might be, we have to build trust. If we could figure out a way, if we could all agree on one way to build that trust, and there isn't one way, there's multiple ways, but I think there's an agreement that trust is a really important part of what is the most important part of doing business. If we can build trust, we can grow our businesses. %. Anybody want to take a wild guess why this came after the previous slide? What does 70% represent? It says under it the zero moment of truth. It's a hint. And this isn't me saying it. I quoted Forrester, if you've heard of them, a big analyst company in the US. Think about yourselves when you go and buy a product. You're buying a new cell phone, or you're buying a new couch. Or if you're a business and you're buying a new piece of software, what is the process you go through in order to buy that product? How many people here look on the internet? I mean, let's just be honest. Okay, we're looking on the internet. Okay, how many are using friends for recommendations? Okay, you're allowed to answer more than one question. Okay, it can be a crossover. Or social media. Okay, or if they're buying something on Amazon, are you looking at the reviews? Okay, that builds trust. How far along, and I'm giving you the answer, in your decision to buy a product are you when you reach out to the company? Sometimes you're all the way. If you're on Amazon, you just click and buy. But I'm talking about maybe in your businesses, or if you're buying a new couch from the furniture store, or a new phone. The average today, according to Forrester, is 70% of the way there. Meaning people and companies are making 70% of the decision to buy your product without even talking to you. Now, for you, it might be 50%, it might be 30%, it might be 90%, but it's definitely something. That means that you need to build trust in that process, somewhere in that 30 to 70%, and we can argue the exact number. We have to figure out how to build trust during that process. And if we take this room, and I didn't do the math exactly, but about 85% of you picked up your hand that you're looking on the website, or on the web, not necessarily on the company's website, I think that's going to give us a clue of where we need to make some investment. Now, what's incredible to me is when I speak to companies, and it's not different, I'm sure, here as it is in the U.S. and in Israel. When there's times are bad, what's the first department that loses their budget? How can that be? If they're responsible for bringing my customers 70% of the way there, how come they're the last ones to be hired and the first ones to be fired? Think about that. I don't know if everybody will agree with me on this here, but I think it's time to say that the old playbook is broken. I'm going to go on a limb here. How many people here use Netflix? Okay, that's more than I expected. Great. So, how many of you have seen an actual ad on TV in the last 24 hours? Not on YouTube. Not on YouTube, but TV. Okay, so the first one we're all in agreement. It's 94%. That was about what we did here. How many of you like to get spam? Okay, that's perfect. That's 6%. You're the 6%. Perfect. So we're all unsubscribing from email. I'm not even really sure what direct mail is anymore. Do people still get mail from companies and credit card offers? So I guess 27%. Still people open this, because 70%, that's our one hope. Because it says here only 27% never open it. I'm not sure how it works here in the US. You can, as a company, you cannot cold call people if they're on a no-call list. And 50% of the country is already signed up not to get cold calls. In Israel, we don't have that law. I still get people calling me in the middle of dinner, asking me if I want to buy insurance. You guys get those phone calls? Yeah, try this one. Ask them for their name and their phone number and say, what time do you eat dinner? And I'll call you back. See if it works. They don't think it's so funny. I don't know. In 100 years ago, there was a man named John Wanamaker. I had to look at it because I couldn't remember. He was considered the father of advertising. 100 years ago or 120 years ago, there wasn't even... and he was the leading advertiser of the time, and people still today talk about him. Yeah, maybe we don't talk about him, but people still talk about him. And if he said this, let me just say it out loud. Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which. Who can identify with that? I'm betting that some of you are a little ashamed about it. I know that I feel that way sometimes, even today, when I do digital marketing and we measure everything, but it's definitely not 50%. But this is something I hear a lot from companies that I ask them, why are you spending all this money on this trade show, or this ad, or this magazine, or even on Google ads and things that they're just spending and they're not measuring. Sometimes I get crazy answers like, 3 years ago I got my biggest deal through this event. They're spending $100,000 a year on this event, and they've never gotten a customer since. Could it be that maybe that customer might have found you another way? So this is something that I think is worth thinking about. So if we're talking about traditional and inbound, and if you understood my way of poking fun at the traditional is really about marketing to people when it's comfortable for you. Right? You're cold calling people. I'm not saying that anybody here is, but you're getting cold called when it's comfortable for the caller. You're emailing when you want to. You're putting an advertising when it's good for you and not so great for me if I'm watching not Netflix. It's very centered around the marketer, the customer, the company. Thank you. Is that on purpose? Anyways, inbound is really about helping your customer. And doing things on their time schedule, doing things that's comfortable for them. What do you think that causes somebody when they find you when they're looking for information? It really increases trust. So what is inbound marketing? What are the main elements? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in going into each one of them. But really, it's about doing all of the activities to be helpful to your customer. These are just activities. If you do them if you just do them, doesn't guarantee success. But if you figure out, I'm going to share with you some tactics of how to do that, how to do this in a way that you're being helpful to your customer, you're going to be able to create that trust, which will ultimately help them get them all the way to 70% and call you. So, on the left you have marketing automation, which is really important because it helps you do things a little bit more. It helps you scale up what you're doing with using technology. It also helps you measure everything that you do. Everything that you do should be measured and allow you to know the success rate of the different campaigns you're doing. And marketing analytics will be a big part of that. And I think the rest are fairly clear. So let's talk about a few one more data point before I go into a few statistics. So this is again, and I didn't put a reference here, but I have the references on some of the following slides of where these data points are coming from. It's 78% of consumers prefer getting to know a company via articles rather than ads. Sometimes we confuse ourselves with what is the difference between an article and an ad. What if I do an ad to point you to an article? It's okay to use Google Ads. It's okay to use social media promotion to bring people in and help them understand how to solve their problems. But they want to understand through information about their problem, not about information about how great your product is. It's a fine line, and it's hard to find the difference. But if you can, and we'll talk again about it, it'll make a big improvement for you. So, inbound marketing sometimes is confused with digital marketing. Digital marketing is part of inbound marketing. SEO is part. All the things that you saw on the previous slide are techniques to do inbound marketing, but in my humble opinion, it's a mindset more than anything else. What I'm doing here today is inbound marketing. I hope that if I can help one person, then I've done my job. If you're being helpful, you're doing inbound marketing. And it's really a mindset, a philosophy, and a culture. And that's, I want you guys to think about that. Let's talk about money for a minute. Who likes to talk about money? How many of you are marketers? That was Cody. And how many of you have enough budget to do what you're doing? So, I get asked a lot of times from marketing directors and CMOs, what should be the marketing budget? Now, the average marketing budget, and this is in the US. US I didn't want to bring Israeli averages because it's a small country, but it's not that far different in Israel. But I'm bringing most of my statistics from the US, and I know that we have in Europe also. When I speak to companies, they still have some catch up to do on the marketing side, on the digital marketing side, but the gaps are being filled quickly. About 8 to 12% of your total budget should be spent on marketing. And if you think about what I said before about the trust and the 70%, this makes sense. When your CFO is looking at it, it doesn't make sense. I know that. But this is really what it takes to create that trust that I'm talking about. Sorry to show little numbers, but I wanted to be more official, and that this is a real survey done by Deloitte, one of the largest accounting companies, of the American Marketing Association, and this maps the percentage of budget spent on marketing over the last 7 years. As you can see, it starts at 8 and it hovers around the 10 and 11% mark. And this is all companies, B2C, B2B, services, product, tech, non-tech, manufacturing. Every company, there's a sampling of every company across the board. So some will be more, some will be less. This is what I was given. Apparently, this is the next thing I want to talk about is okay, the big budget, that's great. How much is spent between traditional and digital? Does this represent the breakup of the marketing budget? So now we're just talking about the marketing budget. It doesn't matter if it's 0.5% or 20%. Does this match up to where you see your marketing budgets today? About 10% into digital and about 90% into traditional. Traditional being events, ads, newspaper, magazines. I'm seeing people shake their heads. I'm not going to make it you guys raise your hand. I think you guys are exercised out for now. Don't worry, I'm not letting you off the hook yet. You can see that on the top left, if you take the traditional and brand publishing, which is what is brand publishing? I'll leave that in traditional. So you're talking about 36% in traditional, and the rest is digital, social media, website, programmatic, display ads, and search ads. So we have a ways to go. What's more interesting in the U.S. That I'm seeing is the rise of social media. I think it makes sense when we talked about we're searching for, I think if you think who's Google's biggest competitor, the answer will be Facebook. It would be Twitter after that, and any of the other social media. Because people are searching for information right on those platforms because they want their friends, people they know, people they trust, or people outside of companies to give them suggestions and recommendations, and just in general to get more content. Sometimes I think a lot of people just get their news from Facebook, right? When you have a few minutes, that's what you're doing. You learn about what's going on in the world through the eyes of people that you know. But it's really fascinating when you think about it. From 2009 to 2018, the marketing budget hasn't changed, but the budget that's going to social media went up 10% or even more, from 3.5% to 13.8%. What's even more interesting, and I'm going to read you the numbers because it's very small over here. Next year, okay, and this is a breakup, and I'm sure we're going to share the slides afterwards. The breakup is by products. You can decide if you're B2B, B2C, if you're a product or services company. But if you think about next year, B2C services companies and B2C products are going to spend over 20% on social media. And in 5 years from now, they're expecting it's going to be close to 30%. 30% of your marketing budget, think about your marketing budget, which is now only 10% in digital. 30% of the total budget will be going to social media. Something to think about. If this helps you out and you're asked for more from the CFO, then I'm happy for you. Okay. How many of you are convinced you're going to go do inbound marketing tomorrow? Okay, got more work to do. I'm going to talk about a company I worked with. I say I loosely, my team, my company, I've worked with over the last 5 years. The company, its name was, and it's a little ominous, right? The name was Edgewater Networks. And when I spoke to them 5 years ago, they had been doing 90% traditional marketing and 10% digital. Sound familiar, right? Their budget was, they had a website, that was pretty much it. And they were spending most of their money on publications, on events, conferences, and the things that you're very familiar with. Over the last 4 years, or 5 years that we've been working with them, we had dramatic results with them. Forget about everything else, more traffic, more leads. At the end of the day, what does your CEO care about? More money, more revenue. This company was not a small company when we joined them. They were doing about $30-something million of business, and to some companies that may sound like a lot, to some that may not sound so much. Last year, they did over $80 million. Okay? And their mix of marketing was 80%, 70 to 80% digital. Okay? It didn't happen overnight. The first year we worked with them, they moved. The way we convinced them, when they called us, one of the reasons they called us was because they had been flat on revenue growth for 3 years prior to joining, to talking to us, and they hired a new CMO. CMO spoke to us, and the way it was the middle of 2014. I remember I was on holiday when I spoke to the guy, and we were at Penguin. We were still only like 5 or 6 people. And he called me and we were talking, and I explained to him what we do and how we use content and strategy and inbound and that. And he said, that's exactly what we need. And he said, but I'm in the middle of my budgeting year. Where am I going to get money from? There's only, I don't know, $5,000 left in the budget for digital marketing. I said, what are we going to do? Write 5 blogs? That's not going to do anything. So he called me back the next day. He said, listen, I got the budget. Can we start tomorrow? I said, what do you mean you got the budget? Because we were talking about this $50,000, $60,000 budget for the rest of the year, and we planned it out. And he said, I convinced the CEO to cancel a conference. Took the $50,000 from that conference, add the $5,000 that he had. He said, I know that you said 60, but we'll start with 55. I said, deal. And we started the next day. My partner was still on holiday, but you don't say no. I remember I was sitting in the cabin with my family. I said, sorry, got to start working on this. And off we went to the races. And that's how we started doing inbound marketing for Edgewater. And that's how they got their first boost of budget. Like I said, in the early years, they only did traditional marketing. They were doing cold calling and trade shows and all the things that we talked about. And the first thing we did once we got the budget was we defined what success would look like. Okay? If you want to do anything, it doesn't have to be just marketing, and you're trying to achieve something, the first thing we need to do is to define what success will look like. And success is not getting more likes or shares, or those are tactics that might help reach your goal. And it could be your goal is to get more likes. I certainly know that my daughter's goals are in that area. But I don't think as a company that necessarily is your goal. Your goal these might be the same that you have, or they may not be. It might be to get more demos, it might be to get more meetings. But they were very clear. They wanted more revenue and more brand awareness. Because they were doing well. They were making a decent amount of revenue, and they had a lot of big customers. But they weren't known. They were a piece of the puzzle. I didn't mention before, this company, what they do, they provide a technology which helps video conferencing be more secure and more and higher quality. So those of you who use voice over IP, which probably most of us, might possibly be using their product today. They're a piece of the puzzle of the telecommunication products that you're using, or the companies are using. Now, because they're such a small piece, a lot of the companies they work with, that most of the people that work at that company may not know who they are, and so they have a very low brand awareness. And we felt that was a very important goal. Second was, and it was second, but obviously very, very important, was to increase revenue. So these are the things that we started with to reach those goals. We wanted to strengthen their online presence. So in order to do that, we had to come up with new messaging for them. And this is that was one thing. Try to figure out what are the pain points of their customers, of the decision makers within their customers, and figure out what we could say in a small amount of words, because that's what messaging is, to resonate with them, so they'll come and want to learn more from us. And they created a very strong content presence about solving the pains of their customers. Remember, I'm saying it important to solve the pain of their customers and not share their product features with their customers, share their pricing with their customers. Those are the things that are going to come later, and they came later. But they were very was very important was to establish themselves as thought leaders in their niche. And all of that led to getting found. Social, I can't stress how much social media helped this company. And most importantly, and a little anecdote, about a year after we started working with them, their CEO told me, I don't know what you've done, but you've turned me into a rock star. I said, what do you mean? He says, every time I go to a conference, everybody thinks we're this huge company because we're all over social media. Everybody's reading our content and asking questions and answering, and it seems like I know everything. So that's a good, that goes to goal number one, which was brand awareness. Second, the other thing that was really important was sales enablement. What sales enablement means is, I think I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to move this along, is when we're creating content, we make sure that the content we're making is relevant to sales. Think about that as a marketer. If you create content that sales feels is useful, then you're on the right track. A lot of times we create blogs and social media posts and all this stuff, which is important. But the salesperson might look at it and say, that's just fluff. That doesn't resonate with my customer. Then you may not be on the right track. That's just another clue. So we talked about that. We talked about execution step number 2. Important part of sharing your doing social media. This is just a snapshot from HubSpot using their social media scheduling. People think social media is a lot of work. Yes, you have to create messaging and things like that, but you can create it. There's lots of tools out there that can help you schedule it out. And this is just an example of a month, and you can see that every day we're scheduling 10 or more posts across multiple profiles. Get more people in the company to join in the social media party, not just using your company brand, but the key people, the employees. We found that employees love to help the company share stuff out to their. It's more authentic and it builds trust. Monitor your social media. Don't just blast things out there. Be real. People ask questions. Make sure you answer. Again, there's tools. This is a snapshot from the HubSpot social media monitoring tool, which allows you to get a notification and just go in there and answer all the questions or comments that come in through social media. One more thing that they did, which was really interesting, was that they created, like I mentioned, they sell into carriers and telecommunication companies that were selling into small, medium businesses. They created the most incredible piece of content, the most successful piece of content they created was a guide to the SMB market. It had nothing to do with their products. It had to do with helping their customers figure out their market. The SMB market, there's millions and millions of companies in the US market that are SMB, small, medium businesses. And this was a guide that helped their customers learn about them more. I'm not going to go into more detail about it, but it just shows you how the inbound marketing mindset settled. This took 2-3 years into working with them that they came out with it to do something that has nothing to do with your product, but to help your potential customers. Most successful campaign that was done. It turns into an annual campaign until today is their big lead generator. I'll leave this slide. This kind of just goes through the steps that we took with them, from creating a new website to creating content and the rest. These are the results that they saw last year when they were still Edgewater Networks. I'll just say the end of the story is that they did not go out of business. The reason they changed their name was because they were acquired at the end of last year by Ribbon Communications, which is a large American public company. They remain working with us till today. But this is the results that they saw last year. The amount of visits, the amount of leads. Again, everything's relative to some companies, like a B2C company. 80,000 visits is what they get in 2 days. But to a company that's selling business to business, it's an incredible success for them. When we started with them, they were getting about 20,000 visits a year. So I think we can all agree that the place to start is to build trust. And you want to start with sales. As marketers, if you think about it, we want to start with sales. You want to speak to your salespeople. You want to speak to your customers. And think about what I was saying at the beginning. How do you look for answers to your questions when you want to buy a product? Okay? you have a problem, you're looking for a solution. You may not know that you need, if you have a leak in your roof, do you know even who to look for? You write into Google, I have a leak in my roof. Maybe it'll be a roofer, maybe you need a plumber, maybe you need an electrician. Whoever's going to answer your question about how to solve that leak or how to solve some other problem, there's a good chance you might end up doing business if they're able to provide the service that you need. So think about how to solve the problems of your customer, even if it doesn't directly relate every time to your solution. You want to build trust? Tell people what's not good about your product, what's not good about your solution. If one of the companies, one of my competitors in the US did a really incredible thing. If you type in HubSpot problems into Google, they answer that question first. Think about that. They're talking about the problems with the company that they resell their products. But they talk about it openly. It creates a lot of trust. How do you rate against your competition? A lot of these things aren't intuitive for us to talk about on our website because we think we're different. We're afraid to share this information, maybe for different reasons. And the ones that do are the ones that are going to be where the puck is at. How much does your product cost? I can't tell. How many people have their pricing on their website? Okay? Everybody should have their pricing on their website. Even if you're a complicated product or service, you should have some gauge of how much your product should cost. People should understand why or how the price could be affected by what they want. You can put a lot of content around pricing. Pricing should be something you write about on a weekly, monthly basis, maybe not weekly, but monthly basis. Because if you think about it when you buy something, how frustrating is it when you want to go buy something and you can't figure out how much it's going to cost you? You don't know what to budget for it, and then you call, you waste your time with a bunch of sales meetings, and then you find out that you don't have the budget. It's even more frustrating for you as a company that wasted all this time on this and prospected, they can't afford your service. And finally, what are other people saying? This is the hardest one to do because, yes, we can say that people are saying great things, but if you can figure out a way, like on Amazon, to get those reviews, then you're ready. Think about it and start with sales. So, just to summarize, we need to find that underpriced attention, like I mentioned at the beginning of LinkedIn, and skate to where the puck is. We want to start with content marketing by answering questions, starting with sales, measure everything as much as you can. You have Google Analytics, there's products like HubSpot and others that can help you so you don't waste your budget. Sometimes it seems like you're spending money to buy these products, but they end up making you money. And just make inbound your main channel and be helpful. Can everybody take out their cell phone? Open your LinkedIn. I have a camera here, but if all of you have your LinkedIn, right? I know it's typical for a speaker to want you to pull out your cell phone when you're talking. But if you go to the second icon on the bottom next to the house, there's the people icon. Okay? All of you found it? The people icon. At the top, there's Find Nearby. Click on that. Okay? If you all do that, and leave it open for the next few minutes, or the next few seconds, I can see all of you starting to show up on my phone, and you should see all of us. We're here together. We're all networking. We should all connect. So feel free to connect with me. And I hope I taught you a new little feature on LinkedIn when you're at the next networking event. Use it. It's a great little feature. Thank you so much for paying attention and raising your hands and pretending I'm interesting. And enjoy the rest of the day.